A carer calls police concerned about a pensioner.
It appears that the lady is unresponsive. They were concerned that
The woman's dog is found alone and frightened.
The place has been ransacked. So who's done that?
Sometimes things are not due.
How many people paying you?
There was a murderer on the loose in a very quiet village where everybody knew each other.
How can the crime scene tell us this? We need to find out who they are. We need to catch that killer at that crime scene.
Hey! Open the door!
When I arrived, there were 3 police, one just off the pavement here and then one on the driveway there. So it's obvious that there's a very serious incident that happened in the street.
In the quiet, presence outside the pensioner's home quickly attracts attention.
The police weren't releasing any information initially. I came out here and spoke to people in the street. There was no confirmation of the victim, but people obviously knew who the neighbour was.
The resident is 72-year-old Jane Hings.
Residents and the locals. And we got the picture that she was a popular figure who lived on her own with her beloved greyhound dog, Paddy. She had people in the village helped walk the dog, Paddy, when it was obviously too much for her.
I was due to go over about 10 o'clock on the Sunday, and I was running late, as always, and she hadn't called me. And I thought that was really weird, so I tried calling her on the way. Kept trying her, nothing. So just carried on over, literally pulled into like the top end of her close, and just saw like there was a lady just standing there with Paddy on lead. That kind of told me all I needed to know. He had come up to me and was like, oh, you know, it's probably just like natural and all that. And I was just like, it's not, I know it's not. It was quite intimidating. You don't get forensics there for just a natural cause.
Inside the bungalows, the carers have formally identified the woman as Jane, but it's not yet clear how she died.
It's very difficult to determine the cause of death. Injuries are obvious. There's no bruising around her neck that you would associate with strangulation. She doesn't have any head injuries. You have to keep an open mind until we know.
We don't know the cause of death. That means that the search of the crime scene is very open. We're not really sure what we're looking for within that crime scene.
Called to the scene, there is evidence of a serious sexual assault.
The body itself can be treated as a crime scene. There was grazes on her cheek. There were bruises on her arms, which indicated grip marks. These injuries suggest the victim was pinned down or held down. If someone is held down, you know, the grip marks will be that mean the person had been held down for quite some time.
This is a vulnerable lady. There were defence injuries on her hands and her arms. She may have put up a struggle.
That is a major crime scene.
Jane also appears to have been burgled. Her phone, handbag, and some jewellery.
Because the crucifix has been ripped off violently because it's got bruising on her neck. It is a violent and heartless attack. Who's done this?
They will be trying to, work out what is the connection between the victim and the potential suspect pool. If it's a robbery homicide, they might think that that could actually be broke into a property. So who do they know in the local community who might be committing robberies? Similarly, who are their known sexual predators?
It's got a preference for attacking elderly women and sexually assaulting them.
Officers go door to door. Jane's neighbours didn't see or hear anything on forensics to lead them to her attacker.
There's some evidence that has to be collected quickly so that you can get reliable results. There could be DNA or some trace elements which could have been left on the body. For this to get lost or to get contaminated as the body is being transferred, and yet it could be the...
When the body's been moved from the bed, there is a small silver tongue bar found towards the lower part of her body. It was not hers. It's a foreign item within that crime scene.
It indicates that someone's been really close and intimate with that victim before they've died. This may well be the...
I'm not sure whether the sexual assault in the first instance, was that the primary motivation, or was it really the robbery and then he decided to enact a sexual attack? Really unusual. It's possible that he saw her as a vulnerable person that he could control.
The tongue bar is fast-tracked for DNA tests. His attacker got in.
Is it one offender? Is it more than one offender? Have they come in through the door? Have they climbed in through a window? Is there any damage? Was there left that may link back to an offender?
CSIs find no signs of forced entry.
Then you ask yourself the question, did the victim know the suspect?
As Jane's remains are taken from the scene, community fears intensify.
What scared the community was the fact that who would do such a thing? Jane wouldn't harm a fly. If they were capable of doing this, what else were they capable of doing? The police were under immense amounts of pressure.
The police would have been considered might go on to commit further similar attacks. Speed was of the essence in apprehending him.
Police have launched a murder inquiry after an elderly woman was found dead at her home in Fleckney. Detective property and forensic searches are continuing there.
Police in Leicestershire are investigating the suspicious death of a pensioner. 72-year-old assaulted in her bed. After finding no signs of a break-in, police suspect she knew her attacker.
In most cases, women are killed by their partner or lover. In just 7% of cases, the victim is a stranger to the offender.
The team's strongest lead so far, they suspect, belongs to Jane's attacker.
We drip water onto the end of the swab. It's important to work out the best place to get the DNA. The DNA is going to hold it right at the tip with some freshly cleaned gloves. And then I'm going to take some swabs from all around this tongue bar and all.
As they wait for the results, CSIs continue to search for evidence at the scene, while detectives take a closer look at...
We look at the victim, so we create victimologies. So what are her habits, what's association with other people.
Jane's friends and neighbours tell the police she
had no close family relatives. She lived on her own. Her life was her dog. She loved her dog.
She rescued Paddy from a rescue centre. I worked for a doggy daycare company, and because she fell over recently and she was struggling to walk Paddy, I was the one that picked him up and dropped him off every night. And you just come in and do this. So I helped her out in other ways like that.
A divorcee, Jane had lived in the Netherlands before moving during their final years.
Jane was a lovely, caring lady, took pride in her appearance, always. She had some close friends that would take her to the hairdressers and take her shopping, literally every week, and do those things for her. And then she got her other friend to the church with her or visit her in hospital or go around and have fish and chips with her. I think she was happy.
She was a well-loved character in the village, and she got her money to spend on herself.
Detectives discover that Jane was hospitalised 3 months ago after 4...
She's very limited in mobility. It may well be a targeted approach based upon her vulnerability. So now we have to focus on that.
After she come out, I've helped with things around the house and even just your little jobs that she couldn't do. She got loads of walking aids and the making a cup of tea was a bit of hard work for her. So she probably did trust people a bit more to help her because she had no choice.
Suspect previously worked or did some work around the house? Or is there someone who lives nearby that potentially do this kind of crime? Because most...
Fleckney is about 9 miles south of Leicester. It's a very tight community. It's the place where everybody knows each other. But in the it has a shop, a couple of pubs, a village hall, which is often quite full of people with different community groups meeting. Part of the reason that everybody does not happen there.
We look at other intelligence around the community that we can utilise, especially through the Safer Neighbourhoods teams, because they have a finger on the pulse of what's going on, who potentially could have done this.
As well as finding who attacked Jane, the team still needs to determine how she died, as SIs look for clues in Jane's bedroom.
Not being able to find a cause of death can be quite frustrating. Has someone actually murdered that person? And possible for us to then either find a weapon or try and link an offender to the crime.
The team investigating thought that she was educated that everything happened there.
The deceased was found covered with a duvet. Her face was covered. It's really important to then work out, has this been smothered either with a duvet or with a pillow? It's really important for the bedclothes and the pillows to be examined and recovered for any...
Further examination of Jane's bed leads the team to believe Jane's attacker is careless.
There was a baseball cap that was found behind the headboard. This lady isn't the type of lady that would wear baseball caps, so why is there a baseball cap? Maybe it's been dropped by a relative, maybe it's been there for considerably that could have belonged to the offender. This then becomes quite a significant find. Potentially, the victim has been sexually assaulted on the bed, thrown or fallen off behind the headboard. It's a really good source of DNA that would be sent to the lab for urgent DNA examination.
How long it's been in that property, but what you can say is who's brought it in there or who hasn't brought it in there.
It had distinctive markings on it, and it was an unusual in the area on CCTV wearing this baseball cap. If so, who was that person?
None of Jane's friends or helpers recognise DNA testing.
I'm just checking to see if there's any blood or any hairs within the baseball cap. Most hairs that you find inside a baseball cap only contain a root. It's the actual root where the DNA is mainly held. You can get DNA from hair shafts, but it's significantly reduced and a lot more difficult. The place you've got to look for DNA now is around the sweatband. The best way to examine this is to use mini tapes, and instead of swabbing the sticky surface, the DNA. Forensic scientists would then extract the DNA from the sticky side of that tape.
Given the seriousness of the offence, to make some very important decisions early on, we call these fast-track decisions. The decision to fast-track this evidence was a really crucial one.
Just 30 forensic scientists have a result. The tongue bar and baseball cap have returned the same male DNA profile. It's a to 25-year-old Craig Keogh.
Keogh had previous convictions. He had burgled the sports centre in Fleckney Village, but also he had burgled his own parents' house.
The suspect is careful to discover any sort of respect for anyone at all.
Some young men start to value violence as a way of resolving their difficulties, and in fact some really good research now that's looking at that connection, and they're suggesting that they're kind of this very fragile male psyche or ego that's been damaged in the nation, but that you've got to then have been socialised to value violence.
Craig Keogh is found to have had a difficult upbringing and is a known drug user. His current address.
The police knew he was a local man and had lived in the village, but they weren't sure where he was at the moment, but they knew that they had to arrest him as soon as they could.
The sooner we can arrest somebody and take some samples from them, the more chance we have of recovering evidence on them or in their property.
Before he disappears.
He's located to a caravan just 2 streets away from Jane's home.
Someone in the caravan! Open the door! Someone with the dark hair in there. Please open the door!
It's almost quite exciting that the police are out trying to find somebody on the evidence that you found in that scene.
Right, don't move, mate. What's your name? Craig, stay there. Craig. Right, hands behind back.
It's very calm. There's no kicking and fussing.
Right, at this moment in time, I'm resting.
There's no fight. He's very calm, especially when he's told about he's been arrested for murder.
You don't have to say anything there. Basically, I'll make one question. Some people should later on in court. Yeah. Time rest, 12-36 hours.
It's interesting to see his reaction, or lack of reaction. He's just a very, very odd behaviour.
He certainly doesn't appear to be alarmed or distressed or disturbed. Perhaps he even felt that his arrest was inevitable.
Questioning a 25-year-old man on suspicion of murder. He was arrested at an address in the village just before 1 this afternoon, police station in Leicestershire.
Craig Keogh is interviewed under caution.
Have you got any piercings?
I'm ear pierced.
Your ear pierced?
My tongue pierced.
Your tongue?
Police ask if he knew Jane.
I was walking through the village, and a shopping bag broke, and I felt the halter, and then I carried it to the house with her.
Keogh did walk her dog on a couple of the became introduced to Jane Hings. He would realise the situation that she was in, that she was a 72-year-old woman that lived on her own.
It could be put by everything else. The tongue stud, the hat, the previous history of burglary. It's all red flags. So he's got knowledge of her habits there off the property. So he would know where her jewellery's kept, what jewellery she has, if there's any cash in any locations.
The last time I saw her was Sunday night.
Okay. What time would that have been? You got there at 10:30?
Yeah.
During the interview, he admits being inside the property on the night of the murder. Now you can focus your priorities, you can focus your resources on the tongue stud. What's the intelligence profile? What do we know about him?
So if we take from 10:30 at night then through to when you left it in the hotel, what happened?
Well, we were watching a little film on the TV, and then she asked me herself.
Yeah, very shocked. All he's doing is creating a narrative for himself. He's creating a storyline for himself, and then hopefully someone else will believe him. That's calculated.
Just tell me exactly what she said to you about having sex.
She just said, "Craig, we have sex with me." But the first time it started off was about in the house, and she just came into the room naked, and she was like, "Craig, come and do it with me, and I'll pay."
How much did she pay you?
She paid me £200.
£200.
And it happened a month ago, the first time. And then she asked me to come back a month later, and then it happened again.
I think times now, if it was just a one-off, then they won't believe me. But if it happened several times, yeah, they might believe me.
Police are convinced that this offender has committed needs to be proved beyond reasonable doubt so that it can stand up in court, so a jury can understand what's happened, particularly if they don't have an exact terms. It's quite difficult for us to prove or disprove what's happened because he's admitted being in the house and that he'd had consensual negated the fact that we might find things there.
The investigation team have got to work fast because they need to reassure the community that, and then you tear their story apart.
What happened?
Well, we were watching a little film on TV, and then she asked me.
Arrested on suspicion of raping and murdering pensioner Jane Hings, 25-year-old Craig Keogh has made a shocking admission.
She's like, I was like, okay, I didn't think anything of it. But she felt sick, and then I left her.
He claims Jane has been paying him for sex, but insists he didn't kill her.
That is because they might know that their DNA will be found. So by saying, well, yes, of course I was there, then they're not implicating themselves in the crime, and they're actually there.
There is one excuse there now. You could add an element of doubt there.
With Jane's cause of death unknown, police don't yet have grounds to charge.
You have a motive and you have a cause of death. There is no perfect world. So you go in with the information you have and you work with that. As he's saying he's had some sort of sexual relationship. Okay, where's the evidence to support that?
Hours after arresting Keogh, the team receives the initial result.
Be some bruising that can be associated with consensual sex, but in sexual assault, there would be significant that will be found.
The pathologist finds Jane's injuries make consensual sex implausible, though they can't be definitive. The court
check if is there any physical evidence that points towards any illness, for example, or any disease which could have led them to die. Also, any signs of poisoning as well. And then if that is not there, it needs to look for evidence of smothering.
The pathologist is able to determine that Jane died between 1:20 and...
When was the last time you saw her then?
The last time I saw her was...
At what time would that have been?
I got there for about 10:30.
Keogh claims to have stayed at Jane's for half an hour, leaving at 11.
The ever-evolving scene. There may be other evidence that may be able to narrow down the timescales, in which case you might be able to narrow down. The suspect said that he'd gone there to watch a movie. Is there something to watch a movie on? Is there a digibox or is there a video record? Is there evidence that there is a movie that's been played? If so, does that fit with his story?
Jane's digibox is recovered, watched on the night she died.
It's not definitive. However, it's another piece. It's circumstantial evidence and else that's going on, and you bring this circumstantial evidence together. We need to identify his movements beforehand. Where had he been? So do we have any CCTV footage of him?
The financial trail. Craig Keogh is located in a pub on Saturday night between 9 and closing time, just 5 miles away from Jane.
TV at a pub in Oadby at the time that he suggested that he was watching a film at Jane's house.
Detectives immediately notice Keogh.
Now, that is significant. It's the same cap that was discovered and recovered from Jane's house. So he's got... The CCTV shows he was very drunk. May have taken other things.
He seemed to be acting in a very strange way. He had been trying to sell people cocaine, and I think he even tried to sell a couple of the pub managers some of the cocaine as well.
The connection between drugs and just the drug has caused it, obviously, because there's lots of people taking all sorts of drugs all the time and don't commit crimes. But it is implicated in some offences, and certainly cocaine is best evidence that there can be a connection in some instances. But it's complicated. There's been some great research done in the United States which shows that if you were cocaine, that you're not likely to suddenly become a violent offender. But that if you've got some violent history prior, that the ingestion of cocaine can kind of escalate.
Witnesses tell police Keogh became increasingly aggressive and was overheard loudly complaining.
He's indicated that something else to do. He apparently had plans with a couple of girls that he was going to go out with. He may have thought that he was going to have some sort of sexual encounter with them, but that didn't happen.
Seen vandalising cars and gardens, kicking a wall and throwing himself into a bush. At 1:10 a.m, CCTV captured...
The suspect got a cab back to his caravan. Instead of going home, decided to walk away and walk towards Jane's house.
It was in the middle of the night. That's her last moments. And the fear It's hot killer night. We just had a really long conversation. It must have been about an hour on the phone, telling me more about her life and everything. She was telling me where she worked abroad and things like that. Yeah, it was just, we had a really nice conversation that night. But mainly it talked about Paddy. She was like, if anything happens to me, we have Paddy. And I was like, you know, yeah, you've had a fall, you're all right, but you're getting better. But then it just gets taken away.
At no point did she mention the suspect coming round.
The next CCTV captures Keogh coming home, only to turn round. Police believe Keogh may have returned to rape Jane for a second time.
That really massively shocked what goes through someone's head to do that. It's control, isn't it? That's what it is, power.
It's unusual, his initial assault, to carry out that kind of attack on a female victim who is clearly more vulnerable. Does say something about his mindset, aspects of their lives.
The team is even more determined to get justice for Jane. After ruling out all his advisors, there is only one possible explanation for how she died.
They had a very high index towards the victim being smothered. It takes about 4 minutes of lack of oxygen to cope. It's disturbing and quite shocking.
Jane's injuries indicate she was suffocated with a soft object, making it impossible for the pathologist to be sure. The team suspect she was killed with her duvet or pillow.
Is to put yourself in the mindset of a killer. If you're going to kill somebody or smother somebody a pillow, how would you hold the pillow? Where would you put your, as well as potential fingerprints? Forensic scientists can potentially interpret that those areas have been used to hold a pillowcase really tightly.
But to prove their theory, first, the team needs to find a way to recover any trace evidence from Jane's bed linen.
Fabric is on using traditional methods. Because of the makeup of the fabric and the fact that it's kind of absorbent, it's impossible to develop ridge detail.
The team are running out of time to question Keogh.
The custody clock is always ticking. You have got the ticking time bomb to a certain extent. It's a lot of pressure.
Committed that kind of a violent offence against an acquaintance that they could go on to do it again.
The team apply for an extension.
You've got to work. You can't get everything. You can't get everything. What can you get in order to bring a charge? You've got to get what evidence you can quickly so that you can work on the rest of the forensic time.
Detectives have been given more time to continue questioning a man on suspicion of murder. The superintendent's going to remain in custody for a further 12 hours. Further forensic examinations, meanwhile, have been taking place.
With just 12 focuses on linking him to the burglary and Jane's stolen belongings. After being seen heading towards Jane's house in the early hours of that morning, at 9:30 a.m. he leaves home with a bin bag.
It's really important for us to try and ascertain what might be in that bin bag.
The team appeals to the community to check their gardens for any suspicious items.
You want to know where is her jewellery? Also phone.
The incident room receives a tip-off.
Information is brought to the police's attention that a mobile phone. It's really important to recover this phone as quickly as possible because if it's in a drain, it's probably likely to get wet and can be covered in quite a lot of good. Chances of getting DNA and fingerprints on that is dramatically reduced. But there still may be information that's obtainable from the SIM card. Any photographs are still recorded on that SIM card.
The phone is fast-tracked for testing and confirmed as belonging to Jane. But to link Keogh to locate Jane's stolen jewellery, valued at over £1,000.
Where would they go to dispose of the jewellery? They're not going to take property and sell it. So we would target the pawn shop, speak to them, put photographs of the types of jewellery out there, and work in partnership with them to identify.
Keogh is traced to Leicester, where he buys a new tongue bar before calling in at a pawnbroker. Officers recover jewellery Keogh pawns. It matches the description of Jane's stolen jewellery.
You're trying to potentially link it back to the victim. You need to think for victim's DNA, so the person that used to wear the crucifix. The area that's important to swab on this, it will be against somebody's neck, which is actually quite difficult to do because it's a really intricate chain.
Swabs from the alien match to Craig Keogh.
Why would a 25-year-old want a woman? How can you do that? It's just wrong.
Keogh is traced to a bar where he buys his friends drinks and is seen joking around.
What it tells us about him, he just doesn't care about his actions. He doesn't care about the consequences of what he's done. He's just a callous killer.
The Crown Prosecution Service authorized Jane's rape and murder, with smothering found to be the most likely cause of death, but not definitive. The team still...
For him to turn around in some sort of defence during a trial and say, actually, she died of natural causes. And so we have to lawfully killed. There's always that fear the jury will believe him.
The team are convinced that Jane's pillows hold the answer to how she died. They need to find a way to get to the evidence.
It's so key to basically maximise what resources you have, but you have to be careful. Smart the way you apply your resources. With new technology, not just within the UK, but overseas, we've gone leaps and bounds to the days when I do now.
Sometimes a crime scene manager has to think outside the box a little bit. There is a method. It's a non-destructive technique. So DNA case grossly underestimated the power of forensic science.
Police investigating the death of pensioner Jane Hings have charged Craig Keogh with her rape and murder. But as the trial approaches, they still need to prove their theory that he smothered Jane. Convinced one of her pillows is the murder, made an innovative forensic technique that could finally reveal vital evidence.
Vacuum metal deposition is one of the few marks on fabrics. VMD technology is a coating process. It's quite often used in the commercial world for something as simple as the baubles of a Christmas decoration. We're heating up metals, and those metals are evaporating and then depositing on the surface of the evidence.
Using VMD develops 15% more fingerprints than any other method available. Evidences of metals such as gold and zinc are heated and vaporize. The vape attaches to evidence, revealing where it's been handled in a reverse.
Leaves a trace on items that they've handled or touched. And these are made up of different things. So they are amino acids, fat. We're not just looking for finger marks. We're just looking for the presence of where somebody's touched an item. And that's important when you're extracting or...
Pillowcases are sent to a team of experts.
So we're simulating the attack. We're going to process this pillowcase in the VMD. VMD is unique in a way that it can be used on all types of evidence. So whether it be paper, fabric. So when we're talking about metals, knife crime is a big problem. So getting fingerprints off of knives, even when they've been washed, your fingerprints are still there.
But until now, no one has attempted to use VMD to identify the presence of a victim and a perpetrator.
Sometimes you have to try things that you've never tried before, and kind of try something like that. It's really revolutionary, really explore technique. Let's try this and see if it works.
We've reached the vacuum level required. Now what we're going to do is to start. What's happening is that the gold gets absorbed into those biological residues, so the sweat that we've left behind.
It sticks to fats and residues left behind by fingerprints. The results from Jane's pillowcases are chilling.
There are areas of rich detail on the edge of this pillowcase.
What we're seeing is the grab impressions of where the hands were placed over the person's face.
In the centre, there's also a saliva mark, potentially from our victim's face.
Event.
With the fingerprints now revealed, the pillowcase is sent for targeted DNA testing.
The beauty of the effect on the presence of DNA on the surface.
Using the chemical enhancement identifies particularly having to examine the whole pillowcase. So the areas that could be DNA swabbed would be these areas on both sides where it's been grabbed, and then also the nose and mouth. You can get sweat from the nose area, and then obviously saliva from the mouth. The DNA profile of the DNA profile towards the edge of the pillow where it looked like it had been grabbed came back as the suspect. This is the murder weapon.
I went to the trial every day. I wanted someone to represent her and be there for her. Obviously, I'm older and didn't want to go through that and endure that. And it was hard, like being that close to him, because you automatically think they're monsters, like they're going to look like a monster, but he just looked like a young kid. But then it
was horrific for them to sit through and listen to what Keogh had subjected Jean to, through what must have been a terrifying ordeal for her.
Dispace. Keogh pleads not guilty.
This really challenged me for a bit. Why? Like, with all the amount of evidence they've got on him, and then to just sit there and, like, he not acknowledge what he's done or even show remorse for it was when he sort of cried and spoke to his mum. That was it.
Given that there's such compelling evidence against him, it does seem remarkable that he's sticking away with a serious violent crime. And some offenders will never admit it. You know, they will never say they did it, sometimes because they just don't want their families to know.
Maybe he needs, because he's pushed enough doubts in there. The jury can see that then. The jury can see, and they can see through people lying.
The offender in this, but forensically, we're able to use incredible techniques to prove exactly what's happened.
The jury retires. It takes it.
I was told not to show any emotion, which is really hard. Keo was led into the dark and was just...
A man's been jailed for life for raping and murdering pensioner Jane Hings, sentencing him, Mr. Justio. His actions after the crime were callous in the extreme, and he'd shown no remorse.
Keo is sentenced to a minimum of 32 counts of rape.
I've been a journalist for more than 30 years, and I have attended lots of murder trials and been to murder scenes, and this fucking and brutal murder committed against a vulnerable and defenceless 72-year-old woman in the safe.
We won't really know the truth behind the motive, but a judge believed that he committed the murder in order to hide and cover up the...
It often revolves around control. There's a body of research that says actually there's things in society, in the very fabric of society, that kind of allow females to be perpetuated. Men that commit these serious sexual acts of violence, they obviously take this to the extreme, but it almost kind of powerful and in control, and that women should be in some way subordinate.
To start off with, it was hard because my phone was quiet. She'd call me probably, and someone took that away for nothing.
As promised to Jane, Michelle looked after her beloved Paddy.
The first few weeks, he was very nervy. Loud noises, big bangs. Who only knows what he experienced in one of my pack. And, yeah, lived out the rest of his life.
Jane was beloved by her friends and neighbours. The community really came together. They set up an online appeal to raise money to pay for Jane's funeral. And they raised the money within days. He gave her a really for Jane and her dog, Paddy.
The sea of flowers that were left in front of a house. You think nowadays that we don't know our neighbours, we don't care about people. But actually, people do care.
In South Carolina, police are alerted to an abandoned car in a field.
Simply said they were reporting a car that had been there overnight.
The windows on the vehicle appeared to be black and soot covered.
Or dead in that car. Has someone been trying to get rid of evidence? If so, why?
The car is empty, a license plate miles away.
They got no response at the front door. As the officer walks into the backyard, there were 2 male victims in there.
There are a range of emotions that may drive an offence like this. Greed, revenge, anger.
Get to that scene as soon as possible.
You need to tell us what you know. Who was it?
We need to find out who they are.
What you know?
We need to catch that killer at that crime scene.
Horry County's a pretty diverse area. You have along one end of it with a lot of high-end homes. And as you move inland, some areas are extremely desolate, very quiet neighborhoods. When something major happens in the inland areas, it's always a bit of a shock to
In a remote community on the outskirts of Conway in South Carolina, an officer secures the scene of the shooting.
Way of knowing when they had been killed, by whom they had been killed, where the killer or killers were. that no one was laying in wait.
Finding no one else at the property, CSIs scope out the scene. Victims are identified as the homeowner and his 25-year-old son, Robert and Robbie Ford.
Ground at the back of the house with a close contact gunshot wound under his chin. The younger, to the side of the driveway, he has a gunshot wound to the back of his head and a gunshot wound to the upper right shoulder were locked. So neither victim had gone into the house yet. Robbie appeared to be trying to flee next to his body, and the pocket that it was in had been pulled out of his shorts as if he was frantically trying to get his phone.
Shoot someone from close range who is already shot and debilitated on the ground really is cold.
As well, Robbie's wallets have been taken from their pockets.
One of the first things we wanted to check, did someone go into the home? Was this a burglary gone bad? Leads. Not quite a year before the murders, there had been a burglary reported at Robert's home. One was a .38 caliber revolver. It's just one of those things that's sort of interesting and makes you go, is this some sort that sort of counted against that? Was that it did not appear that their home had been entered?
It appears both victims were returning home. Now, this is clearly an ambush type of situation.
The killer had maybe been observing or stalking ahead in terms of what they were intending to do and how they were intending to do it.
Their deaths send shockwaves across the neighborhood.
Long-term members of that community. Good Southern people who lived here their whole lives. They were well-liked by their neighbors.
Two, Robert was a devoutly religious man. He was extremely involved in his church. He taught Sunday school along with her. He sang in the men's choir and in the quartet. Just a very well-respected member of the community. Robbie Ford was a student working towards an architecture degree. He played an active role as a caregiver for his mother in the final days of her life, on to commit this horrific crime.
CSIs suspect the men were killed several hours ago.
Of the essence, and that is whether the crime has just happened or it's 10 or 12 hours old. There's still a lot of evidence that can be recovered in the first few hours. If bodies have been there, the more critical the golden hour becomes. So immediately, my first thought would be to see if you can find that will give you an indication as to where potentially the shots were fired from and also how many shots were fired.
One of the things, fired shell casings. Now, with the two types of handguns, you have a revolver where that fired cartridge casing stays in the gun, then automatic where that shell casing is ejected from the firearm. Therefore, it would be at the scene unless someone picked it up. So immediately we need to start thinking someone who was so forensically aware that they picked up the shell casings.
Finding no trace of the shooter anywhere, it appears that
this is an offence that has been premeditated, organised, thought out. The killer's approach is ruthless.
Killer meant business.
That's leading us in a totally different direction now. This perhaps may be somebody and was looking to seek revenge.
But with the motive unclear, the team needs a shooter.
There is such urgency. There is a killer on the loose. We are doing everything we can to track that killer down. We have no eyewitness evidence that is recovered at the scene to tell us the story of what happened.
CSIs expand the search into the land around.
We came across a hunting camera. If it's captured the images that we're hoping it's captured, then we may have... That camera is our most critical piece of evidence. What it may have documented would tell the entire story here.
Police are investigating a brutal double murder after finding popular father and son Robert and Robbie Ford shot dead on...
This raised concerns to a lot of citizens. Who do we have on the loose here? Could it happen on my street, in my house? So, as quickly as we can.
The killer appears forensically aware, but they may have missed a key detail. Seen and sent for analysis.
Based on the placement of the camera, it should have captured images of the offender.
That would be a priority examination by the technical teams, the digital team, to see what information's on that.
It was determined that the camera had no power to it. The pictures that it had captured were from a year earlier. A huge blow to us.
The crime scene points to Robert and Robbie being deliberately targeted at point-blank range with the same .38 caliber firearm. In search of a motive,
based on my years of experience and the lack of reasoning behind the murder from the beginning was that a family member may be involved. Because there's no reason for these two to be dead.
Detectives find 59-year-old Robert was a devoted dad, grandfather, and brother.
Robert Ford worked his whole life to be able to provide for his children.
Robert has 2 children, Robbie and Samantha.
Samantha's previous marriage spent much of her time with her mother, but would visit her father often on the weekends. He and his first wife were divorced fairly early and married Robbie's mother, and they were married for 26 years before she died. Robbie and Samantha were in constant communication, very close. They would spend holidays together. They would often bring meals to each other.
Still no closer to identifying who wanted needs a forensic breakthrough. Detectives request the men's phone data and begin to track their last known movements, while CSI and car.
We certainly believed that whoever drove that car was the person who had killed Robert and Robbie.
The vehicle there may have left fingerprints, DNA. After searching in the vehicle and finding nothing, as I approach the vehicle closer, there are cigarette butts on the ground. If the car was parked on a roadway, the cigarette butts may not be relevant at all. But in this particular case, there's driver's door of this vehicle.
The cigarettes are sent for forensic testing.
Cigarette butts are an incredibly good actually on the outside, because that surface is in contact with the smoker's lips. It's not actually the filter itself, which is contact. Skin cells from your lips are actually transferred onto the end of the cigarette butt. This is where the DNA is going to be.
Taking a closer look at the Ford's car, CSIs are concerned any further evidence may be lost.
I can smell some type of a flammable liquid. I'm seeing charring on the steering wheel, the driver's vehicle.
Initially, the thought that the car had suffered so much fire damage was thought to be a setback, but we realized that the car was not completely engulfed in flames.
By closing the doors and windows, the oxygen in the vehicle was consumed, smothered itself. Inside the vehicle, a ski cap and sweatpants were found, although they had smoke hold a DNA profile. So this was not a rocket scientist, doing this crime.
On one hand, the killer was well planned. They come to dispense of the evidence. It seems that they maybe experienced a moment of panic.
The car is sent off to be examined. Using CCTV and phone data, detectives have pieced together Robert and Robbie's final hours.
In the Charleston area for Robbie, who was going to be studying there the next semester. So they had traveled down there, looked at a few apartments, and then stopped for dinner on the way.
While at the restaurant, Samantha messages Robbie. This is the last time anyone was in contact with the men. At 9:15, their neighbor hears gunshot.
There are quite a few lawfully possessed guns in Horry County, so it's not unusual to hear gunshots. But what was different in this case was that interrupted by a scream.
10 minutes later, Robert's car is caught on camera.
We had surveillance video, the car being driven past. That was on the route that would have been traveled from the scene of the murder to where the car was found, timeline of that night.
Now able to pinpoint when Robert and Robbie were killed, the team confirms alibis for all. The evidence recovered from the car is the last remaining lead. The cigarette and the same male DNA profile. It's run through the police database, CODIS.
In this case, CODIS did not give us a hit. That means that the killer had never been put in the system before. It was a real blow.
This case is going to go cold if we don't come up with something new.
We had to start thinking outside. Decided to look into forensic genealogy. This was really an innovative step.
Is basically the use of genetic genealogy databases to assist in the identification. Lots of us do genealogy tests because it's interesting. A lot of us want to know how much DNA do we share, can we find a third or fourth cousin to send their samples because they want to find distant relatives.
By identifying genetic matches between people in these databases and the crime, are hoping to narrow down the search for the shooter to one particular family.
We take small fragments of DNA, how many of those fragments of DNA you share with other people, and then you've got a possible family connection for who that DNA.
Though not foolproof, it's possible for forensic genetic genealogists to locate a third cousin or closer in 90% of them. The male DNA from the Ford's abandoned car is sent for analysis, but the team must be patient.
Genealogy investigation is as long as a piece of string, basically, because there's a lot of computer algorithms involved in looking at in excess of 6 months to do just one case.
As the months pass, the pressure builds.
We're really going after the investigators. What have you found? Do you have any leads? Law enforcement and prosecutors are waiting and waiting and waiting to get back results.
A year later, they find out if it's been worth the wait.
The names of 3 brothers. 2 of those brothers were already in the CODIS system, so investigators were able to rule them out, leaving us with that one remaining.
At the time of the murders, Granger was living close to the scene of the Ford's abandoned car.
For kidnapping and robbery, he had actually spent 15 years in the prison system, but he was released just allowed the collection of DNA for this database that we now know as CODIS. And so he sort of just missed that cutoff.
Here is somebody who's been trained to survive under combat and follow orders. Somebody who is familiar with using a gun.
But to secure a warrant for Granger's arrest, the team still needs a direct DNA sample. G is not always admissible in court due to concerns over quality.
Forensic genealogy is kind of used for intelligence purpose, but then you need to confirm that.
Determined not to let Granger slip from their grasp, he's put under surveillance.
When we are using cell tower data, what we try to do is identify 3 locations. In this case, they identified the scene where the car was abandoned, the murder scene, and Samantha's home because she was the last person. He actually turned his phone off at the murder scene, but we were able to squarely place him at the scene of the abandoned car.
Calls his girlfriend, Teresa Martin.
At the time of the murders, they were living together. We had him ping because he had to call Teresa to pick him up.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court of law.
Randy Granger put in for questioning.
All right, well, thank you for coming here this morning.
You will.
We're going to talk to you about a couple of things.
I'm nervous.
Yes, it's okay. We just got some questions. Okay.
We're very confident that we have 2 of the right people with Granger and Martin. We have a match as well as the tower data. But if you look at it, it just didn't make sense. Granger and Martin didn't have any obvious motives.
What do you know about anything that Randy has been involved in while you guys were dating?
Nothing. Because I had time. He's not no bad person. He don't drink, he don't do drugs. He's just lazy.
So you never known Randy to be any, like, kind of violent?
Not be in any kind of trouble.
We knew that there was someone else involved. And in order to get to that person, we had to have either Martin or Granger talk.
Exactly 2 years on from the brutal murders of Robert and Robbie Ford, investigators believe they're on the verge of a...
Morning, Randy. Do you mind? Yeah, come sit right here.
Evidence points to Randy Granger, helped by his former girlfriend, Teresa Martin.
Looking at just the 2 of them, Granger and Martin didn't have any obvious be someone else in play. The goal was to try and get to the person behind the murders. What we came to learn, Martin was kind of loosely related to Robert's daughter, Samantha Rabin.
Samantha?
Yes, sir.
How old do you know Samantha?
He, don't bother nobody either. And she got him 3 kids she has to take care of.
Samantha's mother, and had spent quite a deal of time with members of Samantha's family.
As far as I know, she loved her daddy. She posted on Facebook about his birthday and stuff, and that she loved him and stuff, which I know she loved her daddy. I mean,
yeah.
But other than that, that's all I can tell you right now.
Martin engaged in what I call progressive truth. Little bits of the story, but the detectives were very good about leaving her alone for a little bit, coming back into the room and confronting her with evidence.
Investigators ask her about the Ford's car.
So down the street from your, there was a car fire. And Randy was there.
Oh, no, I don't know him.
But you picked him up from it.
No, I did not.
It's worry her. And then slowly, by using the rapport that they've built with her, they are starting to get the information.
But we know that you were right there where the car fire was, and Randy.
Well, I don't know nothing about the fire. I did pick him up down the road, but it was way down the road.
Talk to me about that.
He called me. He said it's raining coming about nothing. Honest to God, on my dead dad's grave, he never said anything to me about nothing.
But you're not... Obviously, we got your cell phone records, and we got text messages.
Tell us what you know, please.
Will I get in trouble?
If you're not involved, no. No is monumental to this case.
Martin was fairly cooperative, to be able to testify in an effort to get a better deal.
We don't want you to be in trouble. Now, let me tell you this, and I will tell you this, because we're going to go talk to him. If he's going to tell us something that incriminates you, you need to tell us.
Convinced Granger is the shooter, the team still needs a direct DNA sample to confirm allergy and link him to the Ford's car.
The forensic genealogy leads us to potential suspect, but
We have a search warrant for your DNA. 2 sets of pupil swabs from Randy Granger. Pupil swabs are, open up.
It's actually a swab from the skin cells around the mouth. It's the skin cells file.
As they await the results, Teresa Martin breaks under the pressure.
Detectives come to your house this morning, knock on your door, and talk to you politely about coming out. We didn't come over there kicking in doors, sending a SWAT team, arresting you. Come here and speak to us in a calm fashion, just like we're doing, have a conversation.
We want to give you the opportunity to be honest with us.
That he done it.
You heard that? Who done it?
Randy. Him.
Based on everything that they had been looking at, and it was just a matter of getting something to prove it.
When the results of the DNA swab come back, Granger...
The cigarette butt that was collected from the ground came back as a match to the profile developed in this case.
I got yours that were sitting right outside of this car that matches this skull cap with DNA on it.
Here it is.
Randy Granger was in the vehicle that day. This is a major accomplishment for us. This is forensic work coming together.
When you think about it for a second.
Sit there and look at these.
I know it's a lot.
We'll be back in about.
But the team still needs to identify who recruited him.
You're not the one I want to deal with on this.
When they do leave, you can kind of see the cogs ticking in his chest, going up and down, suggesting fear, anxiety, panic.
I know you didn't do this by yourself, the person who asked you to do it. Do what? You really want to play stupid? Because I got you right now for at least 2 counts of murder arson, criminal conspiracy, for something that wasn't your idea, person who hired you to do it or asked you to do it. Because that's the only way that this benefits Mr. Randy. Do you understand that? Longer, I guess.
With Granger clamming up, police need to...
Listen, I know you're not being completely honest. So at this point, Miss Teresa has to worry about is out the window.
We know you guys were hard up for money. We know Randy was very hard up for money. Like you said, he was lazy, didn't have a job.
But see, like you said, somebody gave him a job.
Who was it? It's going to feel good once you get it on his shoulders.
Samantha did? Okay.
Samantha had been on two sisters were really going after the investigators. Samantha, on the other hand, really was not was going, and I think that that's something that sort of keyed the detectives to look at her more closely.
With the focus now on Robert's daughter, Samantha need to verify Teresa's confession.
From a forensic point of view, that's incredibly difficult to prove because if they've never been to this and link them back to it. Digital forensics can play a really important role when you can't physically put someone at that crime scene.
Samantha and Granger having ever communicated. They need to find out if someone acted as the go-between.
Our data, along with phone records, investigators were able to see that in addition to being in contact with Granger, Martin had also had frequent.
On the day of the murder, cell site data shows Teresa and Samantha were in contact 24 times.
Fell in line with the timeline that we created for the murder, and that text message was from Martin to Samantha Rabin saying, "I'm home alone."
Message. You did that so she would know that he was there.
Yeah.
Did someone tell you to send her that message?
No, I sent it myself.
You just did it on. Okay.
You know.
But that was key phrase for.
It's happening.
Okay.
After she revealed the entire plot, she helped lay the groundwork. She provided the connection between Samantha Rabin and Randy Granger. Teresa Martin tells us that Samantha Rabin approached her and asked her to bring Randy Granger to her. And when Teresa Martin brings Randy Granger together with Samantha Rabin, Rabin asks Granger, "Will you take care of my dad and my brother?" And it's got to be done.
That's a hard part to say. But you knew he was going to kill them people.
No, I didn't. Honest God, I did not.
Did he tell you that day that he had a job?
He said that he had Samantha hired him to do a job at her daddy's.
Okay. Now, did he tell you that day and then ask you to bring him over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I dropped him nuts.
Well, no, that's fine. I understand.
Yeah. And I left. That's the honest God's truth.
What was Randy supposed to get out of it?
She was supposed to pay him $20,000.
Okay.
Samantha and Randy, she asked him to kill her father and brother. Granger studiously avoided contact with Samantha because he knew that Ed would become a target for police. Folklore tells us that you always want to look at the people closest prosecuting. This is the only case I have had where someone hired a hitman to kill their relatives. It really is some evil that you see in paying someone to kill your father and brother.
This isn't a crime, it's a means to an end. That level of detachment and callousness is, why would you do that to your father and to your brother? What could be so important? That relationship meant nothing to Raybon.
Digital experts recover disturbing searches in Samantha's internet history.
Legally, we don't have to prove motive, but sometimes you have to, because otherwise, like, why would she kill them? You want to give them a reason why she would.
Accused of masterminding her father and brother's murders, Samantha Raybon is taken.
You say you can't organization in court of law. You're the right to talk to the lawyer, to have him present with you on your lead question.
She clearly was not happy. a surprise to her.
As you know, the client's not giving a statement at this time. Don't say anything at this point. Everything in this room is recorded, okay?
She's an attorney and declined to speak with the investigators.
The charge is murder. That during the month of August 2018, the co-defendants to murder Robert and Robbie Ford. Do you want to talk to us?
No.
Okay.
She come cold and controlled, possibly thinking that she may be able to get away with it.
Given the horrific nature of the crime, show some sort of remorse, try to come up with some reason to make this make sense.
Detectives press Teresa Martin, Robbie, and Robert.
Okay? Tell it. Plain and simple. Stop covering up for this murderous woman.
Samantha plotted all this so she inherited everything.
About that before?
The only thing that I've heard her say, that if something happened to her daddy.
Investigators follow the money.
Before the murder, Samantha was living in a single approximately $32,000. After the murders, the properties that she inherited were worth quite a bit more than that, not in accounts, so she ended up inheriting over $1 million. What we came to find out is that Robbie was the primary benefits.
She wanted both of them killed before he left to go to college because she knew if she would have to split everything with Robbie.
Greed can be sown by envy, by fear, it can be driven by rage, and there are no winners here.
Granger is given 2 life sentences. Martin takes her to testify against Samantha.
The courtroom was packed for her trial. There were staunch support, and there were just as many people who believed to their soul that she had done it. And there was a clear divide in the courtroom. But see a man sit on a witness stand and admit to cold-bloodedly murdering 2 people. Granger said the Ford home and he laid in wait for them to come home. While he was waiting there, he would smoke cigarettes, but he didn't want to leave that DNA, so he tucked it into his shoe. When Robert and Robbie come home, he drew Robert's attention. Robert turned, he shot him in the head. Granger executed him. He takes the car to the field, takes off the skull cap, takes off the sweatpants that he changed shoes. And it must have been at that point that the cigarette butts fell out onto the ground and he didn't notice it. The car on fire, shut the door and walked off, not knowing that the fire wouldn't completely consume the car.
Critical mistake meant that a lot of evidence was still within that vehicle. It's a common misconception that fire destroys DNA.
With so much forensic evidence putting Granger at the crime scene, Samantha's defense attacks the credibility of his witness.
The job of the defense attorney to try and knock your testimony out from the jury. Is the person going to be found guilty? Is there a chance they're going to be let off?
But the prosecution has an ace up their sleeve.
That we presented at trial related back to that whole burglary of Robert's home, not quite a year from the murders. Granger testified that had taken some things from her father's home to make it look like a burglary.
Is this the gun you saw?
Yeah.
Both Granger as what Samantha gave Granger to use as the murder weapon, so it certainly does seem that she had been planning this for a while. That is probably the most tension you will ever feel, and people who have worked with me know that they should point, I've done as much as I can do. There was a lot of outside pressure with this one simply because the community stood in the trial. Robert and Robbie were very well loved in the community. And I think that added pressure that I don't feel in every trial I do.
Is found guilty of Robert and Robbie's murders and sentenced to life without parole.
When the judge read the sentence, because it was just a relief at that point. It was a case that really meant a lot to me.
In this case, it may not have been solved. Forensic evidence is what told the story who's responsible.
Use of forensic genetic genealogy in America has been a real breakthrough for them. We've had now over 1,000 cases where forensic genetic genealogy has actively been involved in the case.
If you've got DNA evidence that you don't want to give up on.
Samantha Rabin, to this day, has never shown an ounce of remorse. It's certainly never to kill another family member, but what was unusual here was the real deviousness, the advanced planning, and it just really shows a coldness of heart.